Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be doing a masterclass. We're going to be doing a stream. Tomorrow, I have a business meeting with my advisory and management team, Mr. Mag Rodriguez himself, under fair use, no copyright infringement intended, courtesy of my business partner, Mauricio Ruiz, and the manager's playbook, which you guys can find on YouTube. We're going to do a review of the introduction, the conversation, the educational masterclass with Mag Rodriguez. And I'm going to make sure that I prepare very well for tomorrow's meeting. Um, I'm doing a whole bunch of things. I'm going to be in prayer, meditation, and pretty much just reflecting on everything. So shout out to everybody over there. Um, Let me go directly on the channel, and like we always do, we'll do a live recap, and we'll talk different talking points. If I'm not mistaken, we've done this already. If not here, then definitely on Discord. And rule number one is we can only use what God has given us. This is what God has given us, so we're going to make the best of it. So without further ado, here we go. Let me just make sure that it's queued in. And please join me for dinner and prayer as we educate ourselves.
When you ask what's in 24, 36 months, for us, that's really the future of this is we want to make sure that artists from around the world can now monetize.
Yeah.
There could be an artist in Nigeria right now who can't get a visa to come to the US or Europe. They can have a record that can be blowing up and sell their album to fans from around the world, get paid daily in whatever currency they want directly in Nigeria, and really build a sustainable business around them. An artist in Colombia, an artist in Mexico.
He understands.
Again, these are
what
the
I'm
issues
doing.
that we deal with touring when we say, yes, go see the world. For us in the US, it's pretty straightforward. When we start thinking about artists from around the world, try getting an artist in Mexico or Nigeria or Colombia visa to come to the US, especially in this climate.
Yeah, very challenging.
Very challenging, but the fandom is there, and being able to do it in a digital way.
Fair use, no copyright infringement intended.
How are you, sir?
Fun, bro. Good to
Good to
see you, man.
man. We met real brief at Trapital Summit maybe like a year ago.
Yeah, that was a year.
Something like that.
Yeah,
I want to say maybe it was a year ago. Time is flying.
Yeah.
Listen, you're the man of the hour, but he's talking about you on the platform that you built. Talk to me about Even.
Even it always depends on who I'm talking to, but I'm starting to narrow down the story or how I talk about it even.
Okay.
Especially now more than ever. With Even, we are the infrastructure layer for super fandom. I think a lot of times people try to pigeonhole us like we're a platform. And I think that's because the brand has kind of got notoriety in the space, just because of our partners. But what we're really doing is we're helping artists, teams, labels, distributors go direct to fan and own the relationship with fans. I think one of the big misconceptions is that we just partner with artists, but we're actually partnering with labels, distributors. It's such a core part of what we do since day one, and not being more local about it, right? Going direct to fan is very costly, very time consuming, and it's really easy to mess it up. And we've been doing it now for 3 years, from day one all the way to now, that we can help teams do it in a way that's efficient, cost effective, and more importantly, in a way that fans enjoy it. So that's what we do. It's at a high level. The easiest way, or the way I describe it to my mom, is we're the movie theater. Spotify was Netflix.
Okay.
So most teams are going out using Even 7, 30 days, 60 days, or maybe aren't even going to DSPs, but they use Even to go direct to fan before the wide release.
Right. So in essence, Even I was gonna say it's a platform, but it's not. It's more of a marketplace, what it seems like, right?
Well, there's a marketplace element to it,
Yeah.
which is a part of like the platform element, but the back end is also now it's called Even Studio. So we have Even Marketplace and then we have Even Studio.
On the actual website, like you can go.
Well, on the platform on the back end.
Got you. Okay, sorry. Yes.
So the marketplace is what primarily people know us for.
Yeah.
It's like when you go to even.biz, you can see a bunch of releases, and that looks and feels like a marketplace. That was never the intention. When we launched in April of last year, in 2024, we didn't even have a marketplace. Even was just an infrastructure that you would use to go direct to fan. And then what we found is that fans were finding Even on Instagram and Twitter and following it to find out what other releases were going out with artists and teams that were using the platform.
Interesting.
And
He
we
understands
started asking fans,
what I'm
like,
doing.
Hey, why are you following us?
I'm gonna
And they would
be
like,
in the
"We
meeting
wanna
tomorrow.
find more releases on the platform."
Every meeting that we have,
This release that you did with
I'm
Russell,
always like
this release that you
the
did
last
with
person
Craig,
to
and they wanted to
raise
find
their
out what else
hand
is
and
happening.
whatever. Tomorrow,
So then
gloves
what
is
you
off.
do is start exploring
I'm coming in
this
for the
type
kill
of
tomorrow.
marketplace, where now you can see
Mauricio,
other
you already
releases
know.
on
I'm
the
telling you
platform.
ahead of time. I don't
But
want to
the
argue
vision
with
for
y'all,
Even was always to be,
but I'm coming through
how can you go
tomorrow.
direct to fan in a
For
very
sure,
seamless
for sure.
and quick way. And that leads us to Even Studio. So Even Studio is everything that fans have learned to love about Even, but in a custom environment. So this is what we did with J. Cole, Kevin Gates, Smino, etc., where they go to the artist website, but they don't even know that they're interfacing with Even on the back end.
Oh, okay. Okay. So let's take a couple of steps.
Yeah, sorry, I mean, when worldly real quick.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Healthiest option.
I want to sell directly to fans. How am I using your platform, your infrastructure to do this?
The easiest way to do it is by reaching out to your distributor first.
Okay.
So we partner with distributors and labels first. And that is essentially our KYC process. It allows us to authenticate that it's a real artist on the other side. So this can be, everything from like a United Masters all the way up to a major label. So you can reach out to your team first and say, hey, I want to go direct to fan and I want to use Even, and then they can go and essentially integrate. Now, if for whatever reason you aren't tied to a distributor or a label, you can just go to the Even website and sign up.
Okay.
But there is an authentication process that right now can take anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks to get authenticated.
Okay. How come?
The wait list is just massive.
Well, you're going through every single one of those, right? Because I understand correctly, you did an interview with Ari. I think it's his
Artist
name.
take, yeah.
Yeah, Ari's Take. Dope podcast, by the way. If you guys get a chance to ever watch that, it's a good one. And you mentioned on there that there's 8,000 people that are being put onto the platform on a daily basis.
On a daily basis, yeah. So
you're manually going through that all yourselves?
No. So
Okay.
I mean, a lot of it is fully automated now.
Okay.
So those 8,000 that are being onboarded a day are from our partners. So in 2025, for this year, we allocated a little bit over 2 million artists to our partners. So a lot of these negotiations started last fall into the beginning of this year. It's like, all right, how many artists do you have? How many do you want to start onboarding? And then it's just now continued to stack up. So we're slowly, and in theory, we can let all 2 million in at the one time.
Yeah.
But it's like, I grew up throwing parties, right? And you don't want to let everyone in at the same time, right? You got to let people in.
You don't want to let everyone in, period. Shit show.
Right. So the idea is like you let a few in, you let people get their drinks, you let people find their spot, and then slowly you let people in. But for us on the platform side, it's really important to let people in, let them use their platform, very quickly ask them, what was your experience? How can we make the experience better? And we're doing that every single day, getting feedback, iterating. Now, something has happened in the last 12 months where since we launched in April, super fans and direct to fan has just like been the biggest like buzzword in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of people are looking for, what the tool is going to be. And while most tools are very open where you can just show up and start selling, Even isn't that. So I think that's created more appeal to the platform. That wasn't necessarily the strategy, but now we're just kind of like running with it because it also helps us authenticate the artists. It also helps us authenticate the content that they're uploading. So there's a lot of different components that allow us to in time, we want to be able to do more artists a day, but we found that the sweet spot is 8,000 a day. So closer to the end of this year, we'll have over 2 million artists on the platform, and then we are allocating about 3 million for 2026. And we might end up going closer to like 3 to 4 million. But all of these artists are coming from our labels and distributors.
Okay.
So yeah, fingers crossed that everything goes as planned. It's every day is a new adventure.
I can only imagine. I mean, no 2 days are alike in this business because what you're at the forefront of is artists needing to find other ways to monetize ultimately at the end of the day. And there is a debate, there is a conversation as to whether streaming, and most people will say streaming doesn't pay.
Yeah.
So you're looking at other avenues for artists to generate revenue. I think that's kind of at the end of the day what is super helpful for music industries, creating another vertical. And something that I love that you say a lot. You say it's not Spotify or even, it's Spotify and even.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to talk to me a little bit more about that mindset and what people can take from that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it's like, I also like to clear the record all the time with people where it's like Spotify does.
This is
No.
great.
This is excellent. Let's do some live feedback because we have commercials. So let's use all the commercial space that YouTube is going to give us. I'm going direct to consumer. I own the intellectual property. I'm the artist. I'm the investor. I'm the venture capitalist. I'm the angel investor. I'm everything. Direct to consumer, marketing play. Everything is digital marketing. Excellent. NFTs, OpenSea, Rarible. That's it. We're not reinventing the wheel. Marketing and promotion, publicity to get awareness around the intellectual property for the auction. The investors that are coming in, I have 12 slots, $2 million a piece, $24 million is what I'm putting together. The records in the auction speak for themselves. The technology is there. That will cover everything that we need to go full force. Now, of course, we're doing this to negotiate with the highest bidder, which is most likely going to be BlackRock, even though Blackstone is not out of the picture.
I remember
I can only imagine. I mean, no 2 days are alike in this business because what you're at the forefront of is artists needing to find other ways to monetize ultimately at the end of the day. And there is a debate, there is a conversation as to whether streaming, and most people will say streaming doesn't pay.
Yeah.
So you're looking at other avenues for artists to generate revenue. I think that's kind of at the end of the day what is super helpful for music industries, creating another vertical. And something that I love that you say a lot. You say it's not Spotify or even, it's Spotify and even.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to talk to me a little bit more about that mindset and what people can take from that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it's like, I also like to clear the record all the time with people where it's like Spotify does. Streaming platforms do pay. When I was a manager,
I agree.
My first big check as a manager when I was managing was because of streaming. And,
Same.
I remember this is 2012, 2013. This is like, Tuma and Carl Cherry, who at the time was at Apple,
Yeah.
was reaching out and was like, yo, you guys got to get on Apple. And, we had different folks at the DSPs reaching out because at the time we were just releasing on SoundCloud.
Yes.
We were kids. We were like mid-teenagers just releasing music on SoundCloud. And
Also, to be fair, Spotify was like absolutely brand. It was relatively new. Apple was barely even existing.
Apple was barely even entering the scene. At the
Yeah.
time, it was Beats Music. I think that was
right.
And
Yeah,
turned into
Drake. Yeah.
but the idea of like going to streaming platforms didn't even seem accessible at the time. There was definitely players. I think CD Baby was around at the time, TuneCore was around at the time, but like, the idea of going to, but even that didn't at the time for us, like we didn't know nobody in those buildings.
Yeah.
And I remember the first actual, and I promise this will make sense to the narrative of the story, but this was like 2014. We did a distribution deal with Empire. So at the time I was managing this artist Ishtar out of Milwaukee, and Nima and Ghazi, Jonathan Master, who's now at RCA, but he used to be
It's my dad.
Yeah,
my manager.
yeah.
Fiddles.
Man, one of the best A&Rs. Like
Yes.
he completely changed our lives.
That's dope.
And I could honestly to this day still credit like when I met John, the impact of what that's done to my life to this point. It's
No
still,
shit.
he's one of the early people. I don't think I've ever even told him that, which is crazy. But
He told me now, Jonathan, if you're watching,
if
hopefully
you're
you're watching.
watching, man, thank you.
I want to take a quick break in the pod right now and talk to you guys about something I think
This is important that we use every interval. Tomorrow, and based on circumstances that are external to me, you have to understand that my family's in the dire necessity. I have to make this happen. You know what I'm saying? So tomorrow is one of those days like, yo, we need to get this negotiation accelerated. It's already inevitable. You know? So this is important, you know, and again, I'm a spiritual person. I need to pray, very religious, before I make any decisions, but I'm going to entertain every single business meeting at every interval because I have to, you know, and I'm just about to change my schedule. So I need to pray.
I can't thank you enough for tuning in. I appreciate you. Now let's get back to the pod.
And he reached out. It was crazy. He was very adamant. He was just like, he kept reaching out. And then we finally like, all right, cool. We're going to put up a song. And I think we put up a single.
Wait. He was reaching out because of what?
He wanted us to get on Empire.
Oh, I know he was at Empire at the time.
He was an Empire at the time.
Mm.
Yeah, so he was one of like the senior A&Rs there.
Okay,
And he was
okay.
trying to get us to go to Empire because at the time we weren't distributing music to the DSPs at all.
Right.
And he told us to join Empire. We didn't really understand it, but he was just such a good dude. We're like, all right, cool, we'll give you a record. And then 3 months later, we get a check for like $12,000.
Yes.
And we're like, yo, what is this? Like, is this a real check?
Right.
And he was like, yeah. He's like, you're going to see these monthly now. And I was like, all right, next month, $15,000, $16,000,
Yes.
$20,000.
Yes.
And then we're like, all right, we're going to put all of our music. And at the time, again, this was less competitive at the time, right?
Yeah.
There wasn't as much music going out, you know, and of course now which leads us to now. So like throughout, this is 2013, 14, and then fast forward 2018, I started working at a venture fund and we were running accelerators for artists and managers, basically taking like the Y Combinator, if you know what that is.
Yeah, I do. But for those who might not know what Combinator is,
It's essentially like, think of artist development, but for startups.
Yeah.
Tech startups. But they hired me to build the tech startup model, but for artists. And I'm like, that's artist
so
development.
you're the Sam Altman of the music industry.
Allegedly at the time. But I knew nothing about venture capital at the time. I honestly, I remember when I met Joe and Troy, who are the founders of Generator, they were like so optimistic of like what they can do. And I was like, I've never heard of venture before. This kind of sounds like a scam. But
Yeah.
I'm like, you guys give people money for ideas and it's not a loan. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. And I remember I did the meetings with them and I ended up taking on the job. It was my first job ever. And outside of being a manager, and we were building these programs where we were helping artists and managers. And I had met a bunch of people in the industry at the time just because of my experience with Ishtar and then managing a producer as well. And we were giving $20,000 grants to artists, $5,000 grants to managers, taking no equity, no percentages. These were just free money, 12 weeks. We would take them to LA, New York, introduce them to the industry. And we had a bunch of breakout success. So this is Milwaukee, Detroit, Cleveland. And what I found myself, I ran this program for 4 years. I started feeling like closer to like the 4-year mark, I was like, man, I feel like I've been drinking the Kool-Aid for too long. You know, the Kool-Aid that was like, streaming is everything, you know?
Mm.
On one side, I was working with artists that had millions of monthly listeners on Spotify who were struggling to pay their bills and to like really sustain themselves.
Having millions of
Well, not millions, but like, let's say, I think at the time, the biggest artist we were working with had like 900,000 monthly listeners.
Okay. Signed to a major or independent?
Fully independent. but a lot of them were like features, right? So it's like, you know, like
Yeah.
the vanity numbers looked really
Yeah, yeah.
exciting, but the actual numbers that were coming in wasn't just like
Right.
adding up.
But for context for people as well to know, because I don't even know how much I've talked about this on the pod, but monthly listeners is a vanity metric. That's like how many
Impression.
followers you have on TikTok. Like it doesn't really matter, right? Because it's not one-to-one the views to followers.
Yeah.
Monthly listeners, it can come from being a feature with another bigger artist, and all of a sudden your monthly listeners spike up.
Like
But
that.
it doesn't mean that the revenue comes in for you in the same way because you are a feature.
Yeah.
And the feature revenue on the master is not the same as if you own the master yourself. Well,
And that's also assuming that like they put you on the masters
as a primary.
and getting paid directly, right?
Right.
Like if you're just hoping that your guy's paying you on a record that you just agreed to do.
Especially on an independent back in the day when they didn't have those splits through the aggregate.
This is
Yeah.
pre-STEM days where like you can
Yes,
do,
yes, yes.
you know, and of course like more people do that now, but yeah, I mean, I was with numerous of these artists where like we're having tons of traction, but also we have to understand that like you might blow up today and get 1 million streams today, but you won't see that money until months from now.
Mhm.
So on one side, I was working with these artists who like were doing well, but they were struggling to pay their bills. And then on the other side, my colleagues at the venture fund were working with startups that had 3,000 customers and they were raising tens of millions of dollars. And I remember I was having a conversation with a founder who was like,
3,000
"Man, like, this artist
customers.
is blowing up on TikTok right now. Like they were having a moment at the time. It wasn't TikTok, it was like Reels or it might have been TikTok at the time.
What was it called?
Musically, yes.
Yes.
So we had an artist, probably one of our biggest breakout artists out of Detroit, and he's having a huge moment. And I remember one of the founders that one of my colleagues was working with. They're like, "Man, this is a crazy moment. Like they must be making tons of money." And I would go into my dashboard, like, because we were tracking how much money they were making. I'm like, they made $6,000 last month. It's like, you're lying. He's like, meanwhile, this business had 6,000 followers on Instagram. They had a couple thousand customers paying a reoccurring subscription. And they were looking at like exits in the, 8 to 9 figure range. And I was like, man, what are we doing wrong here? I was like, this is not making sense for me.
Yeah, fair.
And I had a moment. This is 2021. I wrote a white paper. I always make the joke that it's like my Jerry Maguire moment. And it was the music industry needs to get even. And a couple too many margaritas. I wrote this paper. It's like 8 pages long. And honestly, it was mostly
Good shit.
like,
Good shit.
it was a big like attack on the vanity numbers, the lies that I don't think the industry lies to us as much as we lie to ourselves. When I say us, I'm like when I was a manager, where I think it's easy. The vanity numbers get us kind of confused with what's happening.
Right.
So yeah, I wrote this paper, and there really wasn't a solution in the paper. It was more like all the problems, and then how I think the big baseline of this paper was what would happen if we just stopped making music free, and particularly new music. What if we said the same way that a movie goes to theaters, we just treated music the same way? I dropped it on Slack at the venture fund. A couple of days later, Joe and Troy pulled me aside. And they're like, Mac, put this into a deck. And I put it in a deck. And then I didn't hear from them for a couple months. And then the day after Christmas in 2021, I met with them. And they're just like, Mag, we think you should go build this. And I
The
was
day
like,
after Christmas, I was
Like,
fucking
this thing
12
you're,
months ahead of them.
about. And I was like,
12
I've never
months.
built anything before, but like, I'm down to try it. So they wrote me a check. They kept me on salary. And they moved me out to LA. I was living in Milwaukee at the time.
Behind people
And,
by
yeah,
7 months.
7 months later, we launched what became Even.
7 months
I
later.
don't even remember the initial question.
You heard what I just said.
No,
Do the math.
In this conversation, but I think like, what did you write in that white paper that specifically you think caught their attention? Because when you're talking about it was an attack on vanity and the vanity metrics and the numbers.
Yeah.
What specific are you talking again? The monthly listeners? Are you
It
talking?
was monthly listeners. It was followers. It was like, but a lot of what I was talking about in this paper was like the current way that artists are being positioned to build a business is not sustainable. No other business in the world operates this way. I want to start a business. I build a product which costs a little bit of money, and then I go and sell the product. and then I use the money there to build more product, and then I sell more, and I scale, and along the way I can go out and raise capital to inject into my business. But in music, it doesn't really operate that way. And I feel like, yeah, I mean, so much of it too is like artists don't start generating money the way that most businesses generate revenue or start getting exposure to it until what I feel like is too late. You know, because a lot of what ends up happening, and I've seen so much of it, I'll work with some of these artists that like hit this like.
More boxes, more.
Now,
Green has over.
again, I remember having this reflection because tomorrow worlds are going to collide. Based on all the meetings that I've had myself in the last few weeks, I had to step out of my comfort zone and break down to all my business partners, listen, this is technology. If I put it into any different context, there's too many variables. There's too many pockets that people want to put you in. But I'm 1.9% in the intelligence of this technology, raising venture capital as a fucking minority. And these people talk a great game in social media and in digital stuff. But tomorrow we're going to see down to the meat and potatoes. If they're really ready to make a move, I should have an offer tomorrow from this camp. Just to give you, and I'm just saying a basic example.
The current way that artists are being positioned to build a business is not sustainable. You know, no other business in the world operates this way. You know, I want to start a business. I build a product which costs a little bit of money, and then I go and sell the product, and then I use the money there to build more product, and then I sell more, and I scale, and along the way I can go out and raise capital to inject into my business. But in music, it doesn't really operate that way. And I feel like, yeah, I mean, so much of it too is like artists don't start generating money the way that most businesses generate revenue or start getting exposure to it until what I feel like is too late. You know, because a lot of what ends up happening, and I've seen so much of it, I'll work with some of these artists that like hit this like massive tier.
Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing with Taylor Swift now, where it's like one of the biggest artists on the planet is now, she needs to now go do some like work to go and finally be in a position where they can buy the catalog and do all the things.
Right.
Where it almost feels a little backwards, right? Like she had to do so much just to get back
Her catalog.
you know, and start at this stage. And again, like that's just in theory where the business is now and where it's been. And I think for me, it's like, I don't think it's going to change overnight. I just felt like there has to be a new way. There has to be a new system that artists can like, you know, think about success in a little bit of a different way. It doesn't mean that like, if you are in a position where you did the deal, you can't use even and start bringing some of these elements into your business 100%. But I'm also thinking about the impact of even won't be felt until 5 to 10 years from now.
Yeah.
And that's the bet that we're making. It's like, I think about Lil Russell, when we started working with Lil Russell.
Yeah, talk to me about Lil Russell and that case study, because I think you're right in terms of the artists that are signed to majors and that are A-listers. Their business is a bit backwards, even though they make hundreds of millions of dollars. They get those because they have so much catalog that is bringing so much value to a record label that they can afford to do those deals because it's kind of, the money's kind of in the pipeline already.
Yeah.
But I think what is to your advantage is having conversations like this are happening more and more often where independent artists are a lot more savvier. I think you might be better, you are better positioned than I am to actually answer this question because in my mind, I feel like they're getting more savvy in terms of selling direct to consumer, building that email list, ensuring that they're not just relying on streaming. Although streaming can be beneficial, I think.
Yeah.
I think D's a good example. I bring them up often, or Russ is a great example.
Yeah.
But they're just constantly building a catalog. They own the means of operation. They can and then what does happen is, a lot of VC will look at that catalog and be like, that's generating revenue, steady stream of income. Let's go buy that catalog.
Yeah.
Which is real money there. But that's not the only vertical. And I think you guys have a good window right now, it seems like, where artists are starting to understand what are some other ways to go do this. And one of those guys is Lil Russell. built an incredible business, an incredible marketing machine. Talk to me a little bit more about how that relationship got started and
Yeah.
how it benefited him.
Well, Lil Russell, I always said like Lil Russell's probably one of the smartest people I've ever met. And
Facts.
I also think like sometimes just being smart isn't enough, right? I think in any industry, like he's smart and does the work.
Yeah, it could be a detriment when you're really smart.
Yeah, sometimes you're so smart that like you just like, you know,
Too smart for your
too
own good.
smart for your own good.
Yeah.
Like Lil Russell is smart and he does the work.
Yeah.
Everything he's told me he wants to do, he does. Like sometimes he'll hit me about stuff and I'm just like, man, I can't take that on right now. And he still does it anyway. Like he still finds a way to get it done. And the relationship that I have with him has been that way since I first met him. So I met Lil Russell in September of 2022. I met him through one of our advisors and now like
A year later.
his name's JR McKee. I don't know if you know JR.
Yeah, from Atlanta, right?
Yeah, from Atlanta. Yeah. So separate story on JR separately, but JR was the only industry executive that I called when I wanted to build Even, who told me to build it. So everyone else told me not to build it, but for my own good. They're like, Mag, you don't want the headache.
Right.
Like, and JR was the only person. I think I had caught him at a time where like he had already been really successful.
Yeah.
And he's kind of just like, I'm kind of on my way out.
Yeah.
Like, let's go ruffle some feathers. And you know, I talk to JR on a weekly basis, and you know, he's always been able to forecast the industry, you know,
Yes.
and advance. But he introduced me to Lil Russell. When we built the product, he was the person that was helping me find who the first artist was going to be on the platform. So we did JR, yeah. So we did hundreds of calls together. I did thousands of calls across the board, and you know, the product was ready to be tested in June of 22. Just to give you perspective, our first release
1 year
was
later.
October 1st. So we spent months just trying to find the right partner, and some
months.
days were like better than others. But I met Lil Russell in September. I did a call with him. JR introduced us, and the first thing Lil Russell told me on the call was, Mag, why should we use Even when I'm already doing everything you're trying to do with your platform? And I was just like, my initial response is like, you're 100% right. You're already doing it. But the thing is, you can be doing 100 other things. And like, let us take this on and let us be the infrastructure that allows you to be able to do this more seamlessly. And you can just focus on doing what you do best, which is all the other amazing ideas that you want to do. And he was like, all right, put a demo together. We put a demo, we sent it, he approved it. And then the day we were going to go live, I sent him the link and he's like, Mag, I don't know. At the time, Even was like, it was a prototype. So it was nowhere near what it is now. He's like, Mag, this just feels a little complicated. The way you log in, the way you got to do this, the way you got to do that. He's like,
As a customer.
he's just like, I don't think my fans are going to like this experience. And he's like, I don't think I'm going to do it. And I was like, we get off the phone. And I was like, damn, so close. And it wasn't our first time someone said no, but it was the first time they said no when we were that close. So I call him back and I was like, Lil Russell, I'm like, give me 24 hours. Let me show you what I can do first. Like, let me go and get you some sales, get you some real feedback. And he's like, Mag, if you can sell 200 copies in 24 hours, I will post this on my social media.
He came up with that number?
He came up with that number.
What made you say, give me 24 hours? What made you think about that?
I think for me, it was just like, I'm in so deep that like, what's the worst that can happen? You know? And
Say no. That's the worst.
yeah, and like, you know, like, I've been a hustler my whole life. So for me, it's like, if your concern is will people even be able to buy, then let me actually just go sell the product and let's see like what people feel, like how they feel about it. I call everybody on my phone. Everybody. Like people I haven't talked to. It's like, yo, can you buy this? Like I'll cash out you the money after you buy it. I just need your feedback. And in 24 hours, I think we sold 164 or 160 to 170. I can't remember the exact number. And I called him and I was disappointed. I was like, look, man, I tried. We sold like 170 or something. It's cool. Like, I get it. Like, we got some good feedback. He was like, hold on. You got more than 100 people to buy my album and they don't know who I was? I was like, yeah. He's like, I'm posting this right now. He goes live on Instagram,
Right.
posts it,
Right.
and he makes $27,000
Oh shit.
in a matter of hours.
Okay.
I mean, at the time, Lil Russell wasn't as big as he is now.
Yeah.
And then a week later, it
And he
was
communicates that on his live that he just made that amount of money. And
yeah. I mean, I remember like the money was coming in, and we paid daily. So
right.
this is also the first time that he had ever been paid daily before.
Very rare.
And he was seeing the money straight into his account.
Yeah. And just for context, it wasn't 170 people that you knew on your phone, but you were trying to get the numbers up, or was it that? And
It was 170 unique people bought the album.
but not from your phone book.
Yeah, from my phone book.
Oh,
I was calling everybody.
yeah. Okay.
I think literally it was everyone that I knew that I just like.
Crazy. But there's also pay what you want.
Yeah, it was pay what you want. So it's $1 minimum. And I think in revenue, I think I only made him like, I don't know. It wasn't even anything crazy. I think out of the sales I made him maybe like $1,000 or something.
Oh, so sorry, what's the 27,000 in it?
No, that's when he posted it.
Oh wow.
So this was just me. This was just me like
Crazy.
trying to prove that like people will be able to buy this.
Did he know you did?
Yeah, so that's when I called him. I was like, so he told me like, yo, sell 200 on your own and then I'll post it. And I called everyone to get the sales to show him that people would be able to buy and listen.
Got you.
And now actually 2 things happened during that time. So when he first said no, go sell this yourself. And then, well, he didn't say that. I told him, I was like, yo, if I get 200 people to buy it, will you post it? We like found a bunch of little like bugs on the platform.
Okay.
That like helped us solve a lot of those issues that by the time he was convinced to do it himself, the platform was in a way better stage. But yeah, he made 27. So when he posted it 24 hours later, he did 27,000 the first day. And then it was like almost 70 grand the first week.
Wow.
And then it ended up being like 100 grand in the first month on the platform. And this is more money than he had ever made selling an album direct to fan before. And that kind of became the big story, right?
And streaming too, right?
Yeah. So he had made 30,000 in total streaming revenue in 3 years.
Okay.
So doing about $10,000 a year.
Mhm.
And he made 100 grand in the first 30 days on the platform. And now we've done 14 albums with him since.
Wow.
So yeah, but that's how we started working with him. But he was the first artist on the platform. Since then we've gotten really close and like we've been able to, he sees the product, features and new stuff. He's pitching new ideas all the time. And for an artist at that level who's like now having like real growth across.
That's the offer
social
tomorrow.
really big for him, but
They're gonna throw that at me just like Little Russ. I got you. I got albums for y'all. Don't worry.
He was like, I'm gonna go direct.
I got you.
And then I'm gonna go to streaming. And for me, I'm gonna use the revenue from my direct to fan release to help fuel my catalog. And
Yes.
and it's just kind of a cycle that repeats itself.
Lil Russell is a great example of somebody who is really savvy when it comes to marketing. I think he uses social media.
Let's bring that
He
back.
posted it 24 hours later. He did 27,000 the first day, and then it was like almost 70 grand the first week.
Wow.
And then it ended up being like 100 grand in the first month on the platform. And this is more money than he had ever made selling an album direct to fan before. And that kind of became the big story, right?
And streaming too, right?
Yeah. So he had made 30,000 in total streaming revenue in 3 years.
Okay.
So doing about $10,000 a year.
Mhm.
And he made 100 grand in the first 30 days on the platform. And now we've done 14 albums with him since.
Wow.
So yeah, but that's how we started working with him. But he was the first artist on the platform. Since then we've gotten really close and like we've been able to, he sees the product, features and new stuff. He's pitching new ideas all the time. And for an artist at that level who's like now having like real growth across social has been really big for him, but now streaming is really picking up for him as well. He's a perfect example of an artist that didn't choose one or the other. He was like, I'm gonna go direct to fan and then I'm gonna go to streaming. And for me, I'm gonna use the revenue from my direct to fan release to help fuel my catalog. And
Yes.
and it's just kind of a cycle that repeats itself.
LaRussell is a great example of somebody who is really savvy when it comes to marketing. I think he uses social media, in my opinion, the right way. He doesn't think about it in terms of it's too much. He just thinks about it as like, let me just, obviously you want to have quality content, but you're constantly learning from what you're posting. And then you go put some ad spend behind some things that are working, right? But so he's, I think, like an outlier in this.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about some case studies that don't necessarily have the marketing savviness that he has?
Yeah.
But it's somebody that is just kind of beginning in their journey and trying to figure it out.
I mean, there's so many. I think it's like every day we see a new story of a new artist on the platform, and my favorite stories are always like the artists who have never made money from music before.
Yeah.
They come to Even and they make their first 100 and their first 1,000, and we see those every day now, right? Because every day there is a good amount of artists who've made their first dollar from music because of Even. And I think trying to think of like one just like in the last day that the team, because every morning the team will post like a little like little previews of different artists. There's actually an artist, his name's Dolomite is his name, it's like Lamite.
Okay.
He's an artist out of Vegas. He's been making music for I don't know 10 plus years. And he released on the platform last year. He just released another body of work. And what's really cool about his story was he's like, Mag, I've been making music for a long time and I've never really made any money from streaming. But he came to Even, he made a couple $1,000s in like the first couple of days. And I remember at the time I was running a little newsletter. It's kind of like, I need to pick it back up, but I interviewed him. And it was an internal newsletter, like within the company that I would like share stories. And his story was really unique because during this interview, he was like, Mag, I almost gave up making music. And this was like my last attempt at like releasing something. And I told myself that I'm going to use the money from this album to launch my company. He had a lemonade company that he wanted to launch. And he ended up making the money. And then he actually just launched his lemonade company with his most recent album that he just launched, but he also dropped it on the platform. But I think for me, those are the stories that I think mean something. When I think about the stuff that drives me as a person is like, yes, I want to work with the big superstars and the big artists. Like that's always fun, but nothing beats commerce enablement. And for me, or for folks that don't know, like what commerce enablement is like helping everyday people start their own business. And especially the entry, like just starting a business is really difficult, especially for black and brown people. And especially when we think about people in Latin, Africa, and just like the global South. Like starting your own business requires money, resources, and even makes it easy for these creators to run their business. And in many cases, those businesses can just be a seed that can plant towards another business and another idea. And I think for me, that's the stuff that motivates me. And those are the case studies that I really hold tight, and I follow those artists and see, what's the next thing that they build. And we've seen people start again with an album, then they launch a t-shirt company, or they're launching a new business.
I mean, that's important to know because, like, in reality, like, you have an artist, right, that doesn't make any money on streaming, and then all of a sudden they use a platform like Even. Then they make $500. That's still not sustainable, like, for your career, but what it is proof of life, proof of concept is one. But then with that $500, they can then, and maybe not all artists know this, but they might be asking you the questions like, what do I do with this money? Because they got to reinvest it back into the business. And to be honest with you, like $500, it can go a long way if you organically know how to use social media, put some ad spend behind the content, and bring you into Even. You know what I mean? Like there's things that happen like that. I think when you're making just a little bit of money, if I'm not mistaken, you would see it.
Oh, 100. I mean, man, look, I don't know if you remember the first $100 that you made in your entrepreneur journey, right? But it was like
100%, dude.
And what that does to
I was 11 years old.
and what that does to you,
and you know what's crazy? Because your name is, I'll tell you what.
Please tell me too. How did you make your $100?
Because your nickname is Magic. And my first job ever was as a magician.
That's crazy.
I was at 11 years old. My mom, I used to love magic when I was a kid, and my mom saw an ad that there was somebody local in the neighborhood. Like his name was Pedro Juan, a magician from Cuba. He's like, "Yo, this guy's teaching lessons." And I'm like, "Hell yeah!" And so I went with him. Great dude, taught me about business.
Yeah.
And I was like, for people from Toronto, they'll know what I'm talking about. But like, all of a sudden,
Mauricio,
I started going to
my
the
tag,
exhibitions,
my
seeing
nickname
it,
is Magic.
his help with doing.
You don't see the universe?
Paying me $100.
That's
Yeah,
Destiny.
But I mean,
Greatness
look,
is upon us.
I'm telling you, this is, oh man, I'm dating
See the
myself.
Yankees?
That was like in 95.
That's
So I
fucking
was
greatness
like,
right there.
what that is for you, you know?
That's us.
no, but I mean that's a great point. It's like, you know, they always
I may or may not need some podcasts. Listen.
no, you should because the psychology behind it is always like there's specific moments that happen, especially in like before the age of 15, that end up like shaping the rest of our lives. Right?
Yeah.
And I think in that moment, like that probably was a very pivotal moment in your life where like not only are you going on stage, you know, it teaches you about confidence, it teaches you about your worth. And I think for a lot of people in the industry, they take that for granted. And I think sometimes people forget, or I think just everyday people forget that, like, you know, it's so, I always think that it's probably one of the most daunting things to do is to like put yourself out there, especially with something very vulnerable like music,
100%.
and then trying to sell it on top of
On
it,
top of that is even more painstakingly hard for artists.
and then making $1 from it.
Yeah.
It changes man, we see it every day. Like artists will go from,
Because some artists don't feel guilty making that money.
oh, 100%. I remember this is actually really early when we launched out of beta. This was like May of last year. At the time, our Stripe account was connected to my phone number for some reason. And I remember like for the first month, I kept getting these calls for primarily artists that were like getting their payouts.
Yeah.
I get this call from this lady. I remember I remember her name. She was an artist who joined the platform. And I'm only saying her age because she said it on the call when we were talking. She was like, "Hi, is this Even?" And I was like, "Yeah, this is Even. Like, how can I help you?" Just like my customer support voice. And she's like, "I just got $40 into my account, but like, I just released my album this morning. I'm trying to figure out. This must have been a mistake." And I was like, "Well, what's your like email?" And she tells me her email. I pull her up like on my laptop, and I was like, "No, you made $75 today, but 40 already cleared, and it went directly into your account." This lady starts bawling on the phone, just crying. She's like, "I've been releasing music for almost 20 years, and I never made any money from my music before. And I did this because my nephew told me that I should join the platform." And to me, and she told me in the coach, she's like, "I'm sorry, I'm not really that technical. He helped me set it up. I'm in like my 50s, and like I don't really know what I'm doing." And then we get off the phone after like I come to her and I was like, "No, this is your money." She calls me back 30 minutes. "Are you sure? Like you have to look at this. Like who bought my album? I need to know who bought my album." And I walked her through the names of the people who bought the album. And you know, it was like a friend and like the nephew and some like other people who had bought the album.
Yeah.
But to me, that changed everything. That probably made her day. That made her week.
Yeah.
You know? And ultimately, like when we start thinking about most of the artists that we service, like never ever stop reaching for what makes you feel whole.
For me, only with my faith in God and through the power of prayers, everything is coming together. Because just look at Little Russell's business model. Now you combine that with my catalog, he has 40 albums. I have over 1,000 albums. 150 something this year already. God is amazing, yo. God is great. All praises to God, yo.
In the thousands, right?
Yeah.
These are artists that again aren't even making back the $50 that they spend a year to distribute their music.
Mhm.
Because most people don't know that like artists can't upload their music to streaming platforms.
Right. They got to go
Through a distributor.
an aggregator.
Yeah, and you pay a yearly fee to the DIY distributors in the space, and most of these artists aren't even making their money back. And a lot of times, these artists will think it's the distributor's fault, so they'll go from one distributor to the next distributor to the next distributor, and they're just kind of going in circles.
Mm-hmm.
When the truth is, it's not the distributor's fault. It's just it's really hard to make money, especially now that they, demonetized if you don't
Yeah.
make over 1,000 streams.
Yeah.
Now these same artists can come to Even and sell an album, and 10 people can buy their album for $20. Not only did they recoup their money, they now have an extra $150 to go run ads on a symphony, or work with influencers on Breaker or a Groover. It's like we have these different tools. The number one question we get from artists is like, I just make money now.
Another idea.
So you now have a team to help with these kind of strategic.
Yes. So our client services team is essentially, they're the backbone of our business.
Okay.
They're like an offshoot of artist relations,
Yeah.
but they're like customer support for our artists. Especially for like the everyday artists. And that's the number one question that we get from our client services team. It's, artists asking, what do we do with our money? And we have game plans. It's called playbooks.
Yeah.
So we have little playbooks that we give them on manager's playbook.
There you go.
we give them, essentially like different tools that they can use to maximize their reach. And very, very rarely do we meet artists, because we talk to our artists a lot, that are just focused on, I just made money, now how can I spend it on myself? A lot of times
Yeah.
artists want to reinvest, which I think is very powerful, and just also shows that like these are small businesses that want support, and they need access to infrastructure, and that's ultimately what we're giving them.
Do you find that may be one of the reasons why artists aren't successful in terms of generating revenue, because they don't know what to do in terms of marketing? Because it sounds like to me is what you're helping with is figuring out the marketing strategy for an artist.
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think a lot of, at least what we see, we treat, the vanity numbers have made us treat the release date as like the end of the race for some reason. It's like you work on this body of work, and then the day you press send, like you see an artist like,
Absolutely.
just delivered my album,
Yeah.
like, and it's like that's kind of like the finish line almost.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
And a lot of that is because of the rush that happens the moment the music is now made available. And it's just like this quick rush and momentum. And it's also, artists are being very vulnerable. They're putting out, their life stories and real emotions into the ether. And a lot of times, like, the artists don't even want to listen to it. They're just kind of like, let's just put it out to the world.
Totally.
And I think that's why historically artists have been taken advantage of, because it's such a vulnerable, you're working with creators that are at a very vulnerable stage in their life. They just released a body of work. And I think historically, not just musicians, but all creators of all time end up getting taken advantage of, because there is a vulnerability component that only really exists in art and in art forms. It doesn't really exist in other forms of business. Like if someone,
because most artists, for whatever reason, they won't learn the business side of things. And it's not to say that's wrong or right, because some artists don't even necessarily need to learn the business, but if they have great people around them that can actually guide them to learn the business, then perfect scenario, right? I'll put the music out, you tell me what I need to do, and if obviously you gotta be able to work with people, right? Then you can succeed. But a lot of artists, to your point, they have trouble with the business side of it. I very much into believe that, like, listen, if you're an artist and you want to make money, generate revenue, it doesn't mean that you have to make millions of dollars, but if you can make a livable income, or livable wage, like, what does that look like this day and age? Anywhere to 60 to 100,000, depending on where your needs and necessities are, and where you live in the world, and where you live in the city, right? 100,000, depending where you live in the world, could be a lot of money in the U.S. But you can, there are solves for this if you are figuring out what this business looks like. So I say all that to say that, like, if you get into this to make it a career, it is a business. Yeah, you are a brand. You have to think of yourself, as painful as it sounds, as an entity. And if you're not thinking of it that way, it's going to be a real hard way for you to make money or make an income out of this. You got to really learn the steps. And a lot of these artists are doing this shit by themselves too. They don't have the help, right? Yeah. So, I think
that's the one thing that you need a partner, right?
Yeah.
I think like it's even would be nothing without my co-founder, who is our CTO.
Yeah.
I'm not the tech guy.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not technical. I'm not really professionally trained to do much, honestly, beyond just like talk to people. But, you know, for example, like my co-founder, I need him and he needs me, right? And there's this layer of trust that's necessary there. And I think it's the same dynamic that like when I was a manager,
Yes.
you know, manager and artist,
Yeah.
right? It's like, it's a very similar dynamic. And I think it's, you know, we've seen that go in a lot of different directions. But I think it's a very similar, that you need as an artist, I always tell artists, like, find your business partner.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you need to figure out who that person is going to be. And some of the best teams that I've met, some of the biggest artists on the planet always have an incredible team around them that are ultimately helping run the engine.
Well, let's talk about one of those, because you did an amazing situation and deal with J. Cole and Eve. Congratulations on that, by the way. That was massive. And just for context, you did a 10-year anniversary of Forest Hill on Even platform, and it was exclusive to Even, if I'm not mistaken.
Was it exclusive to J. Cole? Even was just the infrastructure.
Got you. Okay, so yeah, exclusive to J. Cole.
Yep.
On the Even infrastructure, but alongside that, it was also a podcast or an audiobook,
Audio series, yeah.
audio series that came with it, where it's Eve and Cole talking, you know, just through their experiences. And on top of that, what you have an interesting layer, I think, was the community chat within the platform. Talk to me about how you went through that deal, because for the last little bit, we've been talking about independent artists and how to get on the platform and how to generate revenue, but you're doing it with artists at a major label level as well. Even though I think Cole's just now just distributed by UMG, if I'm not mistaken, but
The partner is still Interscope UMG.
Okay.
Yeah, so and that was a catalog release. So that was the 2014 Forest Hills Drive. It included 8 additional tracks that weren't available on DSPs.
Right.
But it actually started off with the audio series. So the audio series, it was directed by Scott Laser, and then it was with Cole and Eve. And the opportunity actually came about through Sasha. So Sasha, who is in the team, in like the Dream Build team, it's always difficult to like give him a title within the scope of like what they do, but he is really like, at least in the relationship of Even and Cole, Sasha has been really the point person. But I met Sasha earlier last year. It's crazy, actually. I met Sasha years ago when I was a manager, indirectly. I sent him a cold email. And it's crazy, he didn't remember that when we connected earlier last year. And he had bought a couple releases on the platform through, I don't know if you know Payne, Philip Payne. Yeah, so Payne's actually my guy. Like, he's the one that was the dot connector. He had Jay Safari, actually he had Piff Marty on the platform. He's like our artist number 6.
Oh, crazy.
Back when it was a beta.
Oh.
And then we did Jay Safari with Payne, and then he introduced me to Sasha. Sasha was like, this is really cool. He's like, you know, he just kind of like stayed close. And then sometime last fall, I would say it's like October, no, the first week of November, I get a call like, hey, we want to have a conversation about like what this could look like for Cole. Yeah. And I was like, look, man, I'm all ears. Like, let's figure this out. So we jumped on a call. Me and Cole had a conversation with Sasha. And then they brought up that they had this audio series. And I was like, look, I would love an opportunity to like have a shot at showing you what our infrastructure can do. And, you know, we put it in front of Eve and Cole and Scott, and they were into the idea of just like, I mean, you're talking about also one of the teams that has been operating at the highest level for years, but also, in my opinion, one of the best teams that has been able to maintain that relationship with their audience. You know, talking about like owning the relationship with your fans in a way that never feels like you're asking too much from the audience. I think Cole has probably done the best job at that in team.
How come? What have you observed?
Honestly, like, have you been to Dreamville Fest? Did you?
I have not.
Work. Well, it's done now, but it was. I was at the last one, and you know, it felt like a cookout. Like, you're talking about over 100,000 people, and like people are respectful. There's no festival like it. I've been to every major festival, and I've never been to a festival like that. And a lot of that was tied to the audience and it felt like I got a chance to meet that audience virtually when we did the audio series, where it was like the community chat.
Yes.
Like we were interacting, we were doing surveys with these, fans, and it's like, again, I've never really met a fan base like that and never seen a fan base like that, and a lot of that is tied to just like who Eve and Cole are as people.
Yeah. And for context, I said Eve and Cole, but obviously Cole is the artist.
Cole, J. Cole, yeah.
And then we're talking about Eve Ibrahim. He's a manager.
Manager, yeah.
I guess in the creative role now, like I don't know how it is, and I don't want to assume, but
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think even
yeah,
look, I don't ask many questions. I think for me, it's like when I work with the team, it's more so.
New Neutrogena Collagen Bank 15% pure vitamin.
I apologize. First of all, my cookies are super fresh, delivered on time. The ladies at the bakery, they love me. They make these for me on a regular basis. When you get them fresh, oh goodness, they are perfect. I can only eat 3. I sacrificed chocolate earlier so I could have this for dinner. And I substituted one of my wild cards. Tomorrow, if I want to, I can have a rotisserie chicken. Today, I kind of broke my diet. My business partners got me some of those cinnamon things. I ate like 4 of them. That's like a Snicker bar. So I couldn't eat. Like I wanted some almond joy. If I can have a cheat item, it was gonna be my cookies. And I basically substituted the whole chicken, like all that protein, for the cookies. But I did good because I've had the craving for some ice cream every day for like 4 days. And even today, I did very good.
yeah.
I feel like most of the calls that there's no festival like it. I've been to every major festival and I've never been to a festival like that. And a lot of that was tied to the audience. And it felt like I got a chance to meet that audience virtually when we did the audio series, where it was like the community chat.
Yes.
Like we were interacting, we were doing surveys with these, fans. And it's like, again, I've never really met a fan base like that and never seen a fan base like that. And a lot of that is tied to just like who Eve and Cole are as people.
Yeah. And for context, I said Eve and Cole, but obviously Cole is the artist.
Cole, J. Cole, yeah.
And then we're talking about Eve Ibrahim. He's a manager.
Manager, yeah.
I guess in the creative role now, like I don't know how it is, and I don't want to assume, but
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think even
yeah,
look, I don't ask many questions. I think for me, it's like when I work with the team, it's more so I'm talking to the team, right?
Yeah,
There's this,
yeah.
I feel like most of the calls that we had, it was always like Sasha Scott, Cole, and Eve.
right.
And Scott also plays a big role in this. He's the director of the audio series, but he's also pretty involved with like the overall like creative direction.
Very cool. Yeah.
Which again, I wish I knew everyone's titles. I think for me, it's just like I
They
just
just
see them
get the
as
shit done, man.
they're literally
great partners in a business that's been thriving for many years.
yes. And no one's ever been caught up on titles where like I have to remember people's titles, but they're a collective of, again, a team that moves really tight and they get stuff done. And it's honestly changed the way that I do things at Even. Like it was so inspiring to see how they work, and every detail matters, right? Like every little piece, but also like there was moments where things weren't perfect, right? They also understood that we were a startup, and in those moments where things didn't go perfect, they didn't turn their back on us.
Yeah.
They were like, let's figure this out. Let's figure out how can we make this,
Yo, that's so important.
which doesn't exist in this industry, which is like phenomenal.
Right. Yeah. Because most people in this business, unfortunately, likes to point the finger and yell whenever something goes wrong. So when I'm hearing an artist at the highest fucking level and the team, yeah, not doing that and being respectful of the relationships and having the right conversations. Hey, like, yo, something messed up. How do we figure this out together?
Yeah.
No wonder why these guys have been at the top of the game for 15 plus years. Right?
I mean,
respectful of your partners.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it was just like they knew that we were a new platform, and they took a big chance, using our infrastructure, and it of course changed a lot for us. It changed everything for us as a business. But, every step of the way, it was like, everything always led with just trust. Everything was just like, I trust that you're going to figure this out, every step of the way. So again, it changed the way that I run my business, the way that I talk to my staff, the way that, not that I ever treated my staff poorly, but it's more like the way that we do things. It's like leading with peace, I think, is so important. And again, like, this isn't stuff that they ever like told me that this is how they do things. It was just like based on my experience with your dealings with them. It was just like, oh man, I'm gonna take note of that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna learn from this because you've been doing it for so long.
Right.
There's a reason why I think that, they've been operating at that level. But again, I think it's probably one of my highlights in my career in general, just like being a part of that. I remember the day we did the live stream for the Madison Square Garden show on the Inevitable.
Yeah,
side.
talk to me about that. Yeah.
So it started off with the audio series, then we did the digital album, then we did the physical. We didn't sell the physical, but we have an integration with Shopify. So we integrated into their existing Shopify, and they sold the vinyls and CDs to Inevitable for the 10-year anniversary. And then we did one of the pre-sale codes was for the Madison Square Garden show was through Inevitable. And then for the fans who couldn't buy tickets to the show because it sold out right away, you could access the live stream directly through the platform.
Mm-hmm.
And what's crazy, the day we went to Madison Square Garden, I remember I was walking backstage, and I walked up to Scott Laser, who's the director of the audio series, and he was like, man, this place is different, right? And I was like, you've been here before. I asked him, he was like, yeah, of course. He's like, what about you? I was like, this is my first time inside of Madison Square Garden. And he kind of looks at me, he's like, and you're doing the live stream?
Yeah. We just trust this guy to do this whole thing. And, it was never been here.
No, but honestly, it was like,
you see the panic in his eyes?
No.
I
Honestly, it wasn't even that. I think Scott just kind of looked at me like, oh, okay. This is going to be interesting. But I thought I got there really early, so I saw them set up. And I realized how many people were involved in the production. And again, I had never really seen something at that close, especially at like a Madison Square Garden. And we were there to do the live stream. And by doing the live stream, we weren't producing the live stream. We were just the hosting infrastructure for the live stream. But it was like, again, that's probably one of my highlights. It's like my first time at Madison Square Garden was there to essentially, host the live stream.
And whose idea was that to host the live stream?
I think it was Cole, Eve, and Scott.
And because you've never done that before, right?
So we've done live streams at a smaller capacity, and on paper, and I remember through this time, they're like, man, can you guys take this on? And we're just like, I was like, well, hold on, let me talk to my co-founder. And the thing is, we've done live streams where like it's a virtual release party.
Right.
Or a performance, like an in-studio performance. On paper, the technical capabilities to host a live stream for a virtual release party in Madison Square Garden and our infrastructure is the same.
Okay.
Now, I think for most people, if you're not technical, you don't know that, right? You assume like there has to be more power in this to do this. But the way that our infrastructure is set up, you can plug in to do that or do this. I was still nervous. I didn't even go into the audience the whole show. I was backstage looking at the screen.
That there's no buffering issues and nothing like that.
We had 4, and what's crazy about it is after we did the live stream, we talked, we did a check-in with AWS, Amazon, like they're the actual like back end. Yeah, everyone's back end for the most part. And they were like, did you guys know that you guys didn't have to do this in 4K? And we're like, what do you mean? They're like, yeah, you can do this in 1080 and like no one would have cared. And we're like, we were doing this in like full HD, 4K live stream, and the amount of compliments of people that were like, wow, I've never seen a live stream like this.
Because we're shooting in 4K.
They were shooting in more than 4K, but like normally when you're doing a live stream concert, you don't show it in 4K.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Even like big studios will never do it in 4K because it's
The risk.
there's a risk involved with it. But it also helped us show like how solidified our infrastructure was.
Very cool.
And again, but it goes back to like the same thing with La Russell. Like this was the 5th thing we did with them. So at this stage, we had already learned so much and made a little mistakes here and there, had little bugs here and there. That by the time we did the live stream, it was just kind of like, this is another thing, and we have the infrastructure ready for it. And in return, this is that experience with working with Cole and the team and that specific, like the inevitable rollout. It changed. Not necessarily, I mean, of course it changed stuff, but it also has become the foundation of what we're doing now. The only reason we can onboard 8,000 artists today was because of what we learned from that, the way that we found gaps in our infrastructure and found different opportunities that we then built on. And the moment you build them, they're built. And now what we're doing now, it was all based on like what we experienced with that.
So tell me more about that, because not so much in the experience. Well, yeah, I guess that identifies to the major labels that you do have the infrastructure to build this out, right? So, doing this with Cole is a major win for Even. Congratulations on that, by the way. That's incredible. But so now, what does that relationship look like with the majors? I mean, you work with these artists, right? Or figuring out what the structure looks like, but I can see that being a little bit more complicated than working with an independent artist or distributors, because I'm sure like at the major label system, every single deal is different. No two are alike.
Yeah.
As much as people think that they're all the same, they're not. They're all very different deal structures. So how are you navigating that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's always like I always try to zoom out, right? And at the end of the day, we're working with people, and I treat the way I do business with one partner the same way that I do with other partners, right? My job is to never force anyone to do anything they don't want to do. Because then like that's just not a good way to do business. And like, sure, you might get what you want one time, but then it just doesn't work long term. So there has to be interest from the party to do stuff. And I think when it comes to the major labels, I see it no different than our distributors and our indie labels. Yes, there's some like business layers, especially like if you're dealing with a publicly traded company. It's a little bit different than, of course, like an indie label.
Yeah.
But at the core of it is just people. And making sure that they understand the product that we have, how we can serve them. Do we understand their business? Like when we're thinking about the major label business, they're not just thinking about selling music or uploading music to streaming platforms. They're thinking about, what are we giving to Target? What are we giving to the retailers? What are we, there's so many pieces to the business where it even needs to be additive to that, and we need to show our value. And ultimately, that's what we do. When we show up, we have to show up prepared and know what it is that we're talking to them about. So much for me is always like tied to preparation. Especially when I go to do a meeting with someone, it's like, if I can't forecast 60% of the questions that they're going to ask me, then I'm not doing my job right. And making sure that we have those things in a row where like when Cole's team decided, hey, we want to do the digital album, for us to already have like a set list of things that we knew that Interscope was going to ask for was really important. And I think a lot of it is just asking, right? I remember when I got the call, I was like, hey, can we do this thing? I was like, let's ask, like we're prepared for it.
Right.
And yeah, I think it wasn't a wild ask to make, because at the time we already had relationships in the building.
Yeah.
But
All right, we're gonna end right there at 103, and We'll do a reflection tomorrow. I have this business meeting tomorrow at 5. So I'll let you guys know how it goes. What are my thoughts going into the meeting? Always neutral. Give every investor an opportunity. We share the insights on the portfolio. If they want to invest, we do business. And if not, thank you. God bless. And maybe we'll do business in the future. So I'll leave you guys with that. Have an amazing rest of your day. God bless. See you in the next one.